After 30 years of humiliation over inheritance, an unexpected stranger revealed an amazing truth. Karen sat in the living room of her crumbling ancestral home, the walls closing in around her like an unrelenting fog. It had been only weeks since her mother's sudden passing, and the pain felt like a heavy anchor, dragging her further into despair. Whispers in the town poked at her like knives, each mention of her siblings and their lofty careers igniting a burning shame within her. At a mere 50, here she was, a single mother, a nurse trying to keep her family afloat, but always hovering in a cloud of disappointment. The weight of the house pressed down, a physical embodiment of her failures, echoed by the laughter and success of her siblings who had taken flight into lives that glittered like stars in the night. She had been so consumed by the burden of survival that any aspiration outside her nursing job felt like a distant memory. Family ties turned into lifelines that had frayed and snapped, leaving only the crumbling foundation of a home filled with memories and more pain. Now, as she prepared for the imminent arrival of her siblings for her mother's estate meeting, dread coiled tightly in her stomach. They would certainly judge her again, dismissing her struggles as they always had. The thought made her muscles tense, a knot of anxiety twisting deep in her core. Before she could spiral deeper, Mr. Jenkins, the unexpected newcomer to the neighborhood, knocked on her door. With his salt and pepper hair and eyes that seemed to have seen countless battles, he listened as she spoke, her burdens pouring out like a broken dam. She couldn't explain why, but there was something fresh about his smile, his laughter lines welcoming her turmoil instead of cringing away. As days turned into a routine visit, he began encouraging her to reflect on her passions, to consider the untapped well of creativity inside her. One afternoon, while rummaging through the attic for documents, Mr. Jenkins unearthed a hidden journal that belonged to her mother. As Karen gently opened the aged, fragile pages, words flowed from her mother's heart, poems and stories unshared. She found herself captivated. A flicker of ambition ignited deep within her that brought up dreams she had long buried beneath the weight of obligation. But the real fear was bubbling beneath the surface. Her siblings would arrive soon, poised to snatch a piece of inheritance she felt unworthy of. The estate meeting felt like a ticking clock, counting down to a confrontation that she had never asked for. She imagined their faces, bypassing her achievements as unworthy, as they coldly assessed the home she had forged her life in. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now, let's continue. As the day loomed closer, Karen found herself at a crossroads. Her heart raced with the revelation that her mother held so much talent, so much buried ambition, and yet only served to amplify the fear of being crushed beneath her siblings' judgment. Could she still carve out an identity separate from them? Would she dare stand up amidst the chaos of accusations and unveil the burdens she had borne alone for so long? With the journal clutched tightly in her hands, she faced the tempest brewing inside. The clock was ticking down to a confrontation that could either shatter her anew or set her free. Which would it be? As the day of her siblings' arrival approached, a whirlwind of fear and determination battled within Karen. She sat at the kitchen table, the sunlight streaming through the dusty panes, illuminating the small, worn journal in front of her. Every word she'd read from her mother felt like a fragile thread twinkling in the abyss of her uncertainty. The emotions poured forth from those pages, so vivid, so alive, contrasting sharply with the suffocating silence of her life. Mr. Jenkins had urged her to write, to channel the raw energy from within, but she hesitated. How could she possibly put her thoughts into words when the very act felt like standing before a firing squad? Every line scribbled would be a target for her siblings, a chance for them to derail whatever confidence she managed to muster. yet a nagging voice whispered that the time for hiding was over. Taking a deep breath, she navigated through the kitchen clutter, picking up an old pen. The nib scratched uncertainly against the page, but with each stroke, the pressure began to lift, revealing a flicker of strength buried deep. She wrote about her childhood, her dreams, the stifled artist within her, stories echoing her mother's voice, blending the past with her present. That evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, a message from her brother had come through, cutting through her concentration. They were arriving earlier than expected. Panic surged through her, but rather than buckle under the weight of impending confrontation, a stubborn resolve crystallized. These siblings of hers had always deemed her an afterthought. Now it was her turn to be heard, and her mother's journal provided the courage she sorely lacked. The following morning brought an unexpected clarity. She arranged the living room meticulously, dusting off family photographs, positioned comfortably again, stories woven into their frames. Each picture told of shared triumphs and moments long past, yet still heavy with emotion. It would be a false front if she pretended everything was fine. They would see her nerves, feel her discomfort. The very fabric of her existence felt vulnerable, but she had a decision to make. Would she hide or confront? As her siblings arrived, their laughter echoed, an unwelcome chorus overshadowing the gravity of the moment. Karen sat at the edge, her heart pounding, each pound like a warning bell. They sauntered through the home, eyes scanning as if judging its worth by superficial standards, a scrutiny she had loathed for years. "Where have you been hiding?" her sister spat dismissively as she perused a still-life painting Karen had produced during her art college days. It stuck Karen like a dagger, but instead of retreating inward, she felt a rush of anger. "I was right here," she shot back, surprising even herself. Suddenly emboldened, she found her voice rising, trembling yet fierce. "And it's time for you both to acknowledge that." The initial shock on their faces was palpable. Karen's heart raced, a mix of fear and exhilaration coursing through her veins, like igniting fuel beneath her feet. This was not going to be just an inheritance meeting. It was a reckoning. "I have something to say," she declared, clutching the journal like a talisman. In that moment, she realized she was not merely fighting for her inheritance, but reclaiming her identity. Her mind raced with potential outcomes, and as the tension crackled, the fear transformed into a palpable energy. Would they listen? Would they understand? Here she was, a woman poised on the precipice of change. Her words would either shatter the silence that bound her or empower her to reshape the narrative she had lived too long. Either way, the time had come for Karen to confront the judgments, to define her legacy before it defined her. The room fell silent, anticipation thick in the air as she prepared to unveil the truths hidden among the pages, knowing full well that the moment would determine the course of her life. But would she have the strength to follow through? The stillness enveloped the room, a tangible weight that both grounded and terrified Karen. Deep breaths filled her lungs as she clutched the journal tighter. Each heartbeat echoed in her ears, a countdown to liberation or disaster. "What would Mom think?" she murmured silently, channeling the spirit of the woman who had filled these pages with love and despair. Her siblings exchanged glances, a fleeting uncertainty crossing their polished faces. A spark flickered within Karen, a spark lit by years of doubt, overshadowed by the heavier burdens of their expectations and dismissiveness. She could feel their skepticism pressing against her, a suffocating blanket. But more importantly, she sensed an opportunity swirling, a chance to shift their perceptions. "I've been writing," she announced boldly, her voice clear and confident, despite its tremor. "I've been recording our history, my history. This," she gestured toward the journal, "isn't just about our past. It's about reclaiming my narrative." An audible silence followed. Her words hung in the air, both startling and defying her siblings' prior judgments. Her sister's lips twitched, a smirk forming, eyes dancing with ridicule. "And what? You expect us to care now?" But Karen had already processed that denial. She had prepared for it, long anticipated the defensive barricades they might erect. The journal contained more than mere reflections. It held her voice in a raw, essential state. "I expect you to listen," she countered, her tone unwavering. "I expect you to recognize the person you've sidelined for far too long." The air shifted, a tension filled with confusion, skepticism, and a tinge of something Karen dared not name. The familiarity of their dynamic felt like an all-consuming tide ready to engulf her, and in that moment, she had a choice. Use it to drown her fears or harness its energy to propel her forward. Before she could second-guess herself, Karen flipped open the journal, fingers trembling against the yellowing pages. She searched for an entry that felt right. Everything seemed poignant now, words sparkling with purpose. "You want to know where I've been hiding?" she began, conviction swelling in her chest. "Here." She pointed at the words. "All of this is me. Every drawing, every line is my truth." Suddenly, the skepticism that filled her siblings' faces began to fray. They leaned in, curiosity flickering in their eyes. That slight movement granted her the strength to continue. She recounted the days spent alone, learning to paint, discovering her passion, the moments of clarity juxtaposed against their harsh judgments. Each anecdote peeled back layers of what they had previously dismissed, exposing her vibrant core. "She always believed in you." Her voice softened as she gracefully mentioned their late mother. "Even when you didn't." Desperation and hope intertwined in her words, entwining the siblings' memories with the pain of loss and the celebration of who they were, together. With each confession, her internal conflict shifted, revealing a blossoming confidence. Here she was, a woman building a bridge where once there had been a chasm. Could it be possible for them to see her as more than a mere afterthought? As she forged ahead, she caught a glimpse of their expressions transforming, the shock of realization breaking through the walls they had built. "I'm tired of living in your shadows," she declared, passion igniting anew. "I deserve the same acknowledgement you've always had, but in my own right." The room pulsed with energy, energy that might shift everything or break her spirit anew. This was the precipice Karen had long sought, a confrontation steeped in love, anger, and hope. And now she faced not only her siblings, but the shadow of her own insecurities that had haunted her all her life. Just as a crack of understanding seemed to reverberate through the space, her brother's brows furrowed more deeply, a frown tugging at his mouth. "But what if we just don't?" He glanced at the journal, hesitation hanging heavily in the air. What followed would either solidify her resolve or send her spiraling back into silence. What secrets would the journal reveal next, and would her siblings ever truly understand? Karen's heart raced, her words hanging in the balance between confrontation and collapse. As the silence elongated, it became an entity of its own, one that buzzed in her ears louder than any accusation. She peered into her brother's furrowed brow, a plea resting within her. The unspoken questions rippled through the air. What if they chose not to listen? What if her siblings' perceptions remained immutable? "I can't change the past," she started, her voice faltering momentarily. "But I can change how I allow it to affect me now." The tremor in her tone surfaced again. It was both a vulnerability and a source of unexpected power. Each glance she exchanged with her siblings revealed pieces of their shared history, an inheritance of misunderstanding and a legacy of missed connections. Pushing through the dampening fear, Karen recalled a particular entry that had been transformative. "Here," she declared, flipping the pages to find the words that had once rendered her vulnerable, but now felt like a weapon of truth. "This night was one of the hardest for me. I painted for 12 hours straight." Closing her eyes, she envisioned the emotion that coursed through her then. "I painted those feelings because I didn't have the words. I thought you never understood me, and maybe I didn't make it easy." Her sister's eyes narrowed, skepticism still clinging, but Karen pressed on, wielding her personal truths like shields. "When I was a kid, I was a ghost in this family, overlooked and forgotten. But that's not who I am. I am alive. I am passionate, and I refuse to fade into the background. The challenge of her siblings' expressions quelled her instinct to retreat. Instead, she used that raw energy to fuel her narrative. She unfolded tales of her days spent learning artistry from the talented instructors she had sought out on her own, the myriad of sketches and the finished pieces that had filled her corners of solitude. They didn't just teach me to paint. They taught me who I could be, who I am. Karen's transformation became tangible. She felt it carve a pathway from her heart to her voice, granting her courage. She sensed the shifting dynamic within the room, the initial sharp undercurrent of cynicism contrasting against burgeoning curiosity floating in the air. Her brother's gaze flickered, revealing hints of understanding behind his barrier of disbelief. "But why now?" he pressed, an edge of defensiveness lining his tone. "You never spoke up before." "Because I never believed I was worthy of being heard," she responded, her resolve firm. "But this journal, and my passion, have opened my eyes to a truth I can't ignore anymore." She took a breath, readying herself to confront the deeper layers of the familial fabric woven with fragility and regret. Her sister crossed her arms, an act of defense, but the tension had shifted. "What do you want from us, Karen?" Her heart pounded as she pondered the question. What did she truly want? Respect? Recognition? "I want you to see me, to share my journey, and honestly, to embrace the pieces of our history that we've brushed aside. We're still here, still family. Aren't we worth the fight?" The words surged, a challenge dangling before them. As uncertainty glimmered in their eyes, Karen felt her own tenacity reflect back. She had summoned the essence of her mother through these pages, and by doing so, she was equally rekindling her own spirit. Yet beneath the ambient flicker of hope, anxiety wormed its way back into her mind. What if their acceptance was conditional, hinging solely on her ability to prove herself? "So, what now?" Her brother's voice grew softer, revealing cracks in their foundation. "What comes next is up to us," she replied, daring to step forward. Behind them lay the weight of unresolved memories, but now they all wore masks of uncertainty. She felt a stirring within herself. "I want to create together. Can we allow healing?" With every eye fixed on her, the room felt buoyant. The struggle between familial loyalty and personal identity hung in the air, unaddressed but palpable. As Karen contemplated what lay ahead, she sensed the potential for transformation. Would they join her on this unpredictable journey to reclaim their family legacy, or would denial still reign? Where would this newfound exploration of identity take them all next? The air crackled with a tension that felt almost alive, suffocating yet exhilarating. Karen stood before her siblings, the weight of unspoken words pressing down as she glimpsed the possibility of a deeper connection, the spark she'd always longed for. Their hesitance was palpable, but it didn't extinguish her resolve. Instead, it ignited within her an urgency to bridge the chasm that had defined their relationships for too long. As she surveyed her brother and sister's faces, she realized they were no longer mere reflections of her past misunderstandings, but vessels of their own pain and stories. "I think we should talk about everything we've been through. Really talk," she urged, her voice steadier now. It was a daunting proposal, one that could unravel years of resentment, but also thread a new tapestry of understanding. "Okay," her brother replied cautiously, still guarding himself. "What would that look like?" His tone was a mixture of skepticism and intrigue, as if he were peering over a precipice, weighing his descent into vulnerability. "I think we should start with our parents," she suggested, feeling the words bubble forth, unbidden. What they dreamed for each of us and how that affected our lives. Did any of us ever really understand their hopes? Or did we just keep acting on assumptions? Her sister let out a small laugh, laced with irony. "You always went on about dreams and aspirations. To us, it felt like it was just a pipe dream. something convenient to escape into. But that's it, Karen interjected, her enthusiasm rising. It was my escape, yes, but it also gave me a sense of identity that I fought for. Maybe we all need to confront that. What if we've all been escaping in our own ways? An uncomfortable silence thickened the space between them, as if their mutual defenses were crumbling under the weight of her revelation. What had they been running from? Karen realized that if she didn't embrace this moment, the chance of transformation might slip away. She had fought hard for her truth, and now it was time for them to confront theirs. What if we went through our old photos, our mementos, she proposed, eyes alight with possibility. Rediscover the memories together and find a common narrative? We could paint a new family story? The reaction was mixed. Her brother shifted uncomfortably. What if we start uncovering old wounds instead of healing? We start by acknowledging them, Karen insisted, her voice firm. If we don't face the past, how can we hope for a future? Healing doesn't happen in silence or avoidance. Her brother's brows knitted together, deep in thought. Behind the uncertainty, Karen sensed a flicker of resolve, a desire to confront the chaos of their younger years. All right, he finally murmured. I'm willing to try. Turning to her sister, Karen held her breath. And you? The silence stretched, thick with the weight of her sister's internal struggle. Then, slowly, she uncrossed her arms. I just don't want to hurt anymore, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. That's precisely my point, Karen urged. To let go of the hurt, we need to air it out, expose it to the light. We can draw strength from those memories, reclaim our identities from what has held us back. As they began to engage in shared emotional labor, Karen could feel the spark of connection entwining their stories into one another, creating something uncanny and beautiful. In her chest, a sense of hope surged, but so did a peculiar unease. Would opening this floodgate lead them to the healing they craved, or would it drown them in their own histories? Would they emerge stronger together, or would the ghosts of the past tear them apart once more? Karen already knew that the only way to find out was to plunge deeper into the narratives they had spun. But even as she steeled herself for what lay ahead, another thought haunted her. What if the revelations they unearthed didn't just threaten their bond, but reshaped their very identity in ways none had anticipated? As they gathered in their childhood living room, Karen couldn't shake the mix of anticipation and trepidation swirling in her chest. The walls, adorned with faded family portraits, seemed to echo the silent stories of their past, stories that had long gone unexamined, like relics hidden in dust-blanketed corners. Today, they'd confront those remnants together, each photo capturing fragments of joy, sorrow, and disconnect. Karen's brother, Mike, flipped through an old album, his hands slightly trembling as he traced a finger over an image of their parents laughing at a birthday party. "Do you remember this?" he asked, trying to introduce a semblance of lightness. There was no masking the heaviness in his voice. "I think I blocked it out." "Blocked it out or buried it?" Karen replied gently, purposefully keeping her tone soft, aware that they were on a precipice. "We can't move forward unless we first acknowledge it all." Her sister, Rebecca, sat cross-legged on the floor, tracing the outline of her old toys that were now boxed away. "Sometimes I wish we could unsee what we've seen, the things we've lived through," she murmured. "Those experiences shaped us," Karen countered, an urgency in her heart. "If we don't face them, they'll keep shaping us in ways we don't understand. We run the risk of repeating mistakes." The air thickened with silent agreement, yet the lurking tension was palpable. As they reminisced, Karen felt a wave of new determination crash over her. She could either cower from the truth or wield it as a tool of empowerment. It wasn't enough to simply propose a conversation. She needed to drive it forward. "Let's start with the hardest memories, the arguments, the misunderstandings," she declared, her voice firm, resonating with a calling to action. Not everything was terrible, but it wasn't idyllic either. Opening old wounds could lead to healing, but it might also force us to confront parts of ourselves we've tried to ignore. Like my jealousy over your closeness with Mom, Mike admitted quietly, eyes flickering with a vulnerability he rarely showed. I thought she'd always choose you, that I was lesser. That's a heavy burden, Mike, and I had no idea, Karen replied. But why would we want to hold on to that? It doesn't define you. As he stared into the distance, the raw sadness in his eyes tugged at her heartstrings. She realized how unintentional ignorance had marred the connection between them. This was their chance for transformation, an opportunity not just to heal, but to redefine their relationships. Each word they uttered peeled back layers of resentment and misunderstanding, while also nakedly exposing each person's fears and insecurities. They began to share not just the details of their shared histories, but also the intentions that had motivated their choices. The conversations flowed like an open tap, nourishing their emotional drought. I was scared of the judgment, Rebecca confessed at last. Every time I thought of reaching out, I feared I'd be seen as a burden, or worse, be compared to both of you. It felt safer to fade into the background. Karen's heart twisted as she realized how deeply isolation had pierced Rebecca's spirit. You're never a burden to us, she replied sincerely. We've all struggled differently, and we need to reclaim our voices. We are a team, not fragmented. With every story shared, Karen felt a profound shift inside her. She uncovered new depths of empathy and understanding and unlocked a reservoir of resilience she never knew she had. The siblings were synthesizing their pain into a story of shared strength, and for the first time, they were healing together, rather than as isolated figures in a fractured family narrative. Suddenly, the glimmer of an unresolved silence enveloped them, amplifying the weight of a shadow that loomed just outside the warmth of their newly forged bond. What secrets were still buried beneath years of shared experiences? What hidden truths awaited revelation? I think there's something more, Mike finally said. Something our parents did that we've yet to unpack fully. It's been gnawing at me for years. His eyes bore into Karen, as if he were transmuting all the trust he had into her. What do you mean? Karen asked, her pulse quickening. I think it has to do with the inheritance, and there's a part you don't know about. The heavy shadows began to converge as Karen's thoughts spiraled towards the implications of Mike's revelation. Would this new journey of reckoning lead them toward freedom, or further entangle them in familial upheaval? She steeled herself for what lay ahead, prepared to confront not only the past, but also unravel the threads of their parents' hidden legacies. The air hummed with unspoken tension as the revelation settled heavily between them. Karen felt her heart thundering against her ribcage while she processed Mike's words, each beat punctuating the silence like a countdown to something monumental. The mention of the inheritance stirred a restless anxiety, and she knew instinctively this wasn't just about money or possessions. It cut deeper, weaving itself into the very fabric of their family's history, an intricate web of secrets. What part don't I know? She pressed, her voice steady yet strained. As much as she wanted to draw Mike into the light of clarity, there was a familiar sting lurking in her chest, the fear of further disillusionment and the profound impact it would have on their ongoing reconnection. I've never spoken about this, haven't wanted to, Mike admitted, running a hand through his hair, a telltale sign of his mounting distress. But I stumbled upon a letter last year. It mentioned arrangements our parents made, things they never shared with us. Karen's breath hitched, each word igniting both curiosity and apprehension. Why didn't you bring it up sooner? I thought... He hesitated, searching for the right words. I thought it was just a part of their business, nothing to do with us, but now, I think, it affects how we see ourselves, the expectations they had. His eyes wavered, revealing a depth of concern that hinted at an emotional toll that weighed heavier than any forgotten inheritance. I can't believe they would hide something significant from us. What if it changes everything we thought we knew about who we are? Karen's hand instinctively reached for Rebecca's, seeking connection, an anchor against the unsettling tide of truths that threatened to upset their fragile reunion. "I want to know," Rebecca chimed in, her voice surprisingly firm, despite the tremor betraying her uncertainty. "I need to understand if they really believed we weren't worthy." Karen caught Rebecca's gaze, feeling a symbiosis form in understanding their joint fears. "It isn't just about worth, it's about clarity. If they had expectations, we need to challenge them. We have a right to define ourselves." As they exchanged glances, the barriers that had kept their insecurities at bay began to dissolve. They had the chance not only to unpack the past, but to question their own identities in the light of it. Karen felt, within her, an incandescent fire of resolve igniting, a desire to confront the unspoken narrative that had dominated their lives for so long, to reclaim their autonomy over their own legacy. "How can we find out more about this letter?" Karen asked, her voice resolute, as the prospect of action replaced the haze of anxiety. "We can't leave it buried. We have to unearth the truth. It might lead us to the answers we've long sought." Mike seemed to draw strength from her determination, nodding. "I have it at home. I'll bring it," he replied, his voice growing steadier. "Maybe it's time we confront whoever was responsible for this. Whatever story our parents wanted us to believe, we deserve to hear it too." As the weight of their next move crystallized, a new urgency enveloped the room. Karen's breath stalled in her chest. The thought of unearthing their parents' hidden truths filled her with an unsettling mixture of dread and exhilaration. The unknown was an ambiguous terrain, yet the hunger for clarity propelled her forward, ready to dismantle the shadows cast over their family. "Let's dissect all of it," Karen said, leaning back to ground herself, plotting their course with an intensity bolstered by the fear of the other shoe dropping. "Whatever secrets they held don't define us, but I refuse to continue living in a half-light of generated assumptions. We owe it to ourselves." The weight of their shared resolve hung in the air, and the siblings drew strength from one another, all three ready to embrace whatever lay ahead. But somewhere in the recesses of her mind, a disquiet remained. If their past had already etched deep wounds into their identities, what realities would surface next? Karen felt a knot of anxiety tighten in her stomach, a precursor of all that was yet to come as they prepared to confront the uncomfortable truths awaiting them. "I hope we're ready, because I can feel this is only the tip of the iceberg," she muttered softly under her breath, a lingering question echoing through her thoughts. What untold stories waited to explode from that letter, clad in a layer of dust, hidden behind fragile memories? A sense of anticipation swirled around her, an invitation to navigate through the past and redefine their futures, but clarity didn't come without its cost. Would they emerge intact, stronger, or would they find themselves fractured once again by revelations they were not prepared to handle? As echoes of the past intertwined with their present journey, Karen knew one thing for certain: the moment of truth had nearly arrived. The next afternoon, a heavy rain drummed against the windows of Karen's apartment, mirroring the turmoil swirling in her mind. The sound was rhythmic yet chaotic, a fitting soundtrack for the chaos she felt inside. She stared at the blank walls, a silent witness to her personal battles, and felt an urge to break the stalemate of their familial reckoning. Under the weight of unresolved grief and confusion, her thoughts leaped forward to the moment they would confront the contents of Mike's letter. Every unanswered question piled upon the last, forming an avalanche of potential realities that threatened to bury them. What if the contents revealed their parents had painted an entirely different picture of worth than the one they had internalized? Could their entire existence thus far have been a shadow cast by expectations they were never meant to uphold? Determined to be proactive, Karen pulled out a notepad, her pen poised over blank lines waiting to be filled with the foundations of their inquiry. What had they always believed? What truths had been taken for granted? She began scribbling questions, a map to navigate through the minefield of secrets. What did Mom and Dad really think we deserved? Did they even want us to know about this? What if we were never meant to inherit anything, and why? Each word was an act of resistance, a declaration that they were not merely the byproducts of their family's hidden narratives. She was eager, yet apprehensive, caught in an undertow of emotions. Could she confront her parents' past in a way that would help redefine her future? As her pen scratched across the paper, Karen felt the tension in her stomach ease slightly. This act of creation, of defining her path, sparked a flicker of hope. She needed a strategy, a protocol to ensure they emerged stronger from this revelation rather than splintered into new fractures. The door creaked open as Mike stepped into the room, carrying the weight of the letter in a manila envelope. Karen could feel the surge of anticipation and dread echoing in her chest. "You brought it," she stated, her voice steady despite the chorus of doubts fighting for dominance within her. Mike nodded, handing her the envelope as if it were a live wire. His unease was palpable, a reflection of her own turmoil. "Are we ready for this?" he asked, his gaze flickering between Karen and Rebecca, who had joined them, a wordless testament of solidarity despite their collective apprehension. "Ready or not, we need to know. This can't hang over us like a storm cloud any longer," Karen replied, summoning courage she hadn't known she possessed. As she pulled out the letter, thunderstorms began rumbling ominously outside. Each crack of thunder seemed to resonate with her heartbeat. The paper crinkled in her hands, a tangible signal of the buried truths waiting to be unearthed. Holding it felt like holding the keys to a door that had long been locked, but it was now poised to unlock their entire family history. "Let's read it together," she proposed, feeling the weight of the moment settle over them like a heavy blanket, warm yet suffocating. The words promised illumination, yet bore the threat of further darkness. With trembling fingers, she broke the seal. As she began to read aloud, each sentence spilled forth like a whisper of the past. The secrets that could redefine their family legacy danced tantalizingly on the edge of revelation, drawing them into a vortex of introspection and conflict. Karen's heart raced, and her throat tightened as fragments of truth began to unfold, shining light into shadows that had long dictated their sense of self. And yet, amidst the anticipation, a sinking feeling washed over her. What would the words reveal? What expectations would they dismantle? "Sometimes, confronting the truth doesn't liberate. It shatters," she whispered, the weight of the words a haunting reminder that they might lose more than they hoped to gain. As the final syllables echoed in the charged air, an unsettling silence enveloped them. The quest for clarity had morphed into something far more profound, an inquiry not just into family secrets, but into their very selves. If they were about to unearth not only the past, but the core of their identities, how would they navigate the aftermath? What transformations awaited them on the other side of this reckoning? The truth was out there, shimmering like light through the cracks of their shattered illusions. But would they be brave enough to face its brilliance? The silence in the room was heavy, suffocating, as Karen's voice trailed off, leaving the last word hanging in the air. She felt a weight pressing against her chest, a confusion of relief and dread mixing into a potent blend. What she had read echoed in her mind, as though her very thoughts were now tainted with each revelation. Her family's narrative had been steeped in secrets and assumptions, and by reading that letter aloud, she had unlocked a vault filled with more than just the past. Mike shifted uncomfortably in his seat, glancing at Rebecca, who had grown unusually pale. The tempest outside only mirrored their inner turmoil. The echoes of thunder now felt like the universe affirming the chaos that lay ahead. "Can you believe what we just uncovered?" Mike finally spoke, his voice strained, barely rising above the storm. Yet the question lingered. Could they believe it? The words of the letter had suggested hidden fortunes, long-withered family ties, and perhaps an identity built on an illusion. Questions of worth and belonging now loomed larger than ever. What did it mean to be a part of a family that had withheld such a significant chapter of their lives? For years, Karen had clung to the belief that their parents loved them, and yet loving them had meant binding them to lies. "Karen, what do we do now?" Rebecca's voice cracked through the chaos. In that moment, it struck Karen that they weren't just partakers in a tragic family saga. They were players in a story yet to be fully realized. The power to rewrite their narrative lay in their hands. But the very act of retelling could splinter their already fragile connections. Forcing herself to breathe deeply, Karen began to assess the situation. Confidence replaced doubt as she contemplated her next move. "We need a plan. This isn't only about the inheritance," she asserted. "It's about reshaping our entire existence, understanding who we are in the absence of those illusions." "Are we prepared for our parents' reaction?" Mike asked, tentatively, as if afraid of the answer. But Karen felt a surge of defiance rising within her. Prepared or not, the time has come for us to face them. We deserve to know why our lives folded in on themselves like a paper crane, delicate, beautiful, yet inherently fragile. We can't hide anymore. With determination pulsing through her, Karen grabbed her notepad, which was now filled with poignant questions. This time, they were manifestos of courage rather than mere inquiries. "Let's each write down how we feel about this, not just about the money or the inheritance, but about our worth as individuals, as siblings, and as a family." They each took turns jotting down their thoughts, a tangible manifestation of their evolving identities. With each stroke of the pen, a new layer of understanding peeled away the deep-seated fears that had paralyzed them. Each shared feeling transformed the atmosphere, shifting from that of dread to one of empowered anticipation. Yet even as they prepared to confront their past, an unsettling realization brewed. Emerging from shadows could lead to revelations too profound to recede back into darkness. What new tensions might ignite between them as truths unfurled? What if their parents responded not with the love they sought, but with anger or denial? Karen's heart raced. The choice to confront her parents was not merely an act of bravery, it was a gateway. "Tomorrow we'll do this," she said decisively. "We'll invite them over and demand the answers we need. It's our turn now to take control of our narrative." As she spoke, a flicker of a smile crossed Rebecca's face, and even Mike's tension seemed to ease slightly. They were stepping into the storm, but this time it felt like they were wielding the lightning, not just being struck by it. However, as she considered the impending confrontation, a looming question creased her brow. If they were able to ignite change within their family, what other facets of their lives would also ignite? Would they emerge sharper, or would the truths they'd unearthed shred their bonds even further? Their new path was illuminated, yet still treacherous. Tomorrow promised confrontation, but also potential transformation. Would they emerge united or shattered? The storm may have cleared, but a new turbulence was on the horizon. The next day arrived, marked by a crisp clarity that felt like a promise. Karen stood in her living room, heart racing, as she arranged the chairs around the small table. The texture of her mother's faded tablecloth stirred memories of gatherings long gone, each crease resembling the lines etched into her soul from years of self-doubt and familial misunderstanding. As the clock ticked closer to the designated time, anticipation coiled tightly in her chest. Would her parents come ready to confront the hidden narratives they had clung to, or would they dismiss their inquiries as nonsensical grievances? She felt a newfound resolve settling into her bones. It was time for the past to unearth itself, even if the excavation promised discomfort. When the doorbell rang, she felt the fluttering chaos of her emotions reigniting. Each sibling exchanged nervous glances, unspoken affirmations passing between them. They were ready, backed by the strength they had begun to cultivate in one another. "Let's do this," Mike said quietly, a challenge sparked in his eyes. Together they opened the door. Their parents stood there, carrying an air of caution that felt heavy. Karen braced herself for the familiar mix of love and judgment that had shaped their dynamic for so long. "Come in," she offered, her voice steady yet warm, a blend that encompassed both invitation and command. Once seated, silence enveloped the room, filled with the weight of unspoken words. The atmosphere rippled, electric with potential. Karen seized the moment. "We found something important, and we need to talk about it," she began, determination coursing through her. "This letter speaks to truths our family has buried, and we're done pretending. We deserve clarity about our past and our place within this family." Her parents exchanged startled glances. "What are you talking about?" her father asked, a hint of defensiveness creeping into his tone. "What letter?" She felt a smidge of trepidation flicker inside her, but quelled it. "A letter revealing parts of our inheritance, parts of us that we never knew existed. It raises questions about what you expected of us, and we want to understand." His brow furrowed, incredulity washing over his features. "That letter is just business-related, nothing you need to concern yourselves with. Why is it so important to dredge up the past?" Karen inhaled sharply, readying herself to rise above the escalating tension. "Because it's not just about inheritance. It's about understanding the expectations that have shaped our lives and acknowledging the assumptions that have kept us apart. We need to connect the dots of our history." Her mother shifted uncomfortably. "Sweetheart, it was never meant to hurt you. We made decisions we thought were best for our family, but we never meant to tear it apart." "The point is, it did tear us apart," Rebecca interjected, her voice surprisingly firm. "Those decisions built an invisible wall between us. If our worth was measured by the things we inherited, where does that leave us?" The truth hung in the air, as heavy as the silence that followed. Her parents' denial began to crack, exposing the fragility of the narratives they had woven. Mike leaned forward, eyes shimmering with urgency. "This isn't just about things. It's our identity, our value as people. If there are expectations we were never privy to, we owe it to ourselves to understand them." Finally, the dam of their parents' well-crafted comfort began to quake. "You don't need material possessions to define your worth," her father said, voice strained yet softer now. "You are enough as you are." In that moment, something shifted. They had battled through vulnerability, and slowly their parents' defenses began to lower. It was a nervous, dawning realization, one that could alter the trajectory of their family. "What do you really see when you look at us?" Karen asked, her voice unwavering. "Because for so long, I felt like an afterthought, a side character in my own life. If we can confront this together, perhaps we can rewrite our story." Slowly, their parents' expressions softened, confusion fading into a glimmer of recognition. This was no longer about unearthing any family secrets, but reclaiming their true selves amidst storm-clouded assumptions. "I see," her mother started, her voice wavering slightly as barriers began to chip away. "I see children I have always loved, but I realize I haven't always shown it as I should. It was easier to keep things hidden than to deal with disappointment. What about acknowledging the complexities of our true selves? Can we unify rather than divide?" Karen urged, each word slicing through the remnants of avoidance. In the ensuing silence, the air shifted. They had initiated a conversation that transcended the boundaries of mere inheritance. It became an unfolding narrative, woven of shared experiences and realizations. "I don't know how to begin," her father admitted finally, his eyes glistening with a newfound weight. "To embrace everything we've avoided discussing for so long. But if you're willing to embark on this journey, we'll follow." The connection, though unsteady, began to forge a path ahead. Instead of resolving old conflicts with blame, they sought understanding. Instead of battling disconnections, they felt compelled to unify their disparate narratives. Their truth emerged from the shadows, not as a burden, but as a catalyst for change. The call for clarity did not diminish familial love. It enhanced it, fortified their shared identities beyond tangible possessions. "I think we need to create new traditions, ones defined by our acknowledgement," Rebecca suggested softly, a spark ignited in her spirit. Let's celebrate us, not just as individuals, but as a complete family, with all our flaws, fears, and dreams. Hope surged and entwined like vines seeking light. Karen felt gratitude well up within her. In that moment, each sibling transformed before her eyes, no longer just fragments of her insecurities, but amplifications of shared courage. As they plunged forward, Karen exhaled deeply, recognizing this was not just a chance for family reconciliation, but a hallmark of her own transformation. She had found her voice, redefined her identity, and stepped into her worth, all for the possibility of a more profound connection. Tomorrow would still unfold its uncertainties, but today marked their reclamation, a promise made amid the layers of truth that would ripple outward far beyond the confines of this room. The actual inheritance was not what they had once anticipated, but something infinitely more potent: understanding, identity, and the bond that can't be auctioned or taken away. Now was the time to rise together, poised to embrace their unified future with open hearts. They had recreated their legacy, not from secrecy and judgment, but from authenticity and love. A new dawn beckoned, and together they were ready to step into it. If you found Karen's journey inspiring, you need to subscribe now to our channel to continue following exclusive emotional stories. This is the moment to show your support. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and let others experience these transformations. We want to hear from you. Comment your reactions and theories about the ending below. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Let's spread the impact of overcoming personal struggles together.